Imagine a mountain called Old Rocky. It sits a day's journey from the coastline to the east and 2 days' journey from a well-known lake to the west. The north side of the mountain is covered with ice and snow at the peak, and the rest is barren and rocky, and the south side is lush and green. Imagine two villagers who grew up on either side of Old Rocky describing the mountain they grew up on to a third party. They describe the location, a day's journey from the coastline to the east and 2 days' journey from the lake to the west, and they're both in agreement thus far. But then the northerner says, Old Rocky is barren with a large snow-covered peak. The other says, hold on, that mountain is predominantly lush and green. They quibble back and forth over the specifics of Old Rocky, with the northerner holding that the mountain is snow-covered and barren, perhaps a small shrub here and there, but certainly not lush or verdant. And the southerner claims snow is minor, if at all, and the mountain is essentially entirely green. The northerner and the southerner clearly disagree about the details and specifics. For the third party to witness the disagreements over whether the mountain is snow-topped or verdant and green or not, and decide they must be speaking of two different mountains would be absurd, if all the other details about the specific location and name of the mountain is the same. A difference in details from the point of perspective do not equate to discrepancy on the item being described. Or to put it another way, different descriptions of the same referent do not entail different reference. In Protestant and specifically in evangelical circles, the claim is often made that due to Muslims and Jews' rejection of Jesus as God, that they must consequently be worshiping a different God than the Trinitarian God of the Christians. They'll often ground their claims in verses like John 5:23, quote, "Whoever does not honor the Son does not honor the Father who sent him." And 1 John 2:23, "No one who denies the Son has the Father, but whoever confesses the Son has the Father as well." They cite these verses to say, by rejecting Jesus, they have rejected God the Father. Therefore, when they say God, Adonai, or Allah, they are not speaking of the same God that we Christians worship. But not having the Father does not entail referring to a different being. It means lacking true communion with Him apart from the Son. If when Jews and Muslims say God, Yahweh, Adonai, Elohim, or Allah, they mean the one God, the uncreated creator, the God of Abraham, then they're describing the same one God, uncreated creator, God of Abraham, that Christians are when they say God. The referent is the same, although their descriptions may differ. In the mountain illustration, both perspectives render different descriptions of the same intended object. The actual object being referenced is the same regardless of one's knowledge or perception of it. And so, while the southerner may be incorrect in saying the mountain is entirely covered in trees, in light of the truth that the northern side is barren and has a much greater prevalence of snow and ice. That discrepancy does not confirm that the northerner and southerner are speaking of different mountains, especially when they agree on more foundational things like the location and name. Now let's say a pilot was to fly over the mountain and take a photograph, showing the truth of the matter. Either villager could reject the photograph as fake and staunchly hold to their view and deny the truth outright, and yet when they say, Old Rocky, they're still referencing the same mountain. In the same way, a rejection of the Incarnation or the Trinity is a rejection of the truth that's been revealed indeed, but does not change the intentional referent. The only way the intentional referent could change would be to redefine the boundaries which the word God is encompassing. For instance, to speak of an impersonal, abstract force rather than the personal and relational God of Abraham would be to deviate from the shared boundaries of what is meant by God. And thereby, at that point, the one speaking of the impersonal, abstract force would indeed be referencing a different God than the Christian God. For instance, if the northerner said, hold on, the Old Rocky I'm referencing isn't near the coast nor lake at all. Or the southerner was to say, now hold on a minute, you think Old Rocky is a mountain? Old Rocky's a range of small hills. Then it would be safe to assume that they're speaking of different mountains or different landforms entirely, since the intended reference is no longer the same. An agreement on God being the one God, the God of Abraham, the uncreated creator, functions as a rigid designator that fixes reference even amid false or conflicting beliefs. Much like the location of the landmass in question and the distinction that the landmass is indeed a mountain, which both parties addresses by a common name, affirms that both the northerner and the southerner are referencing the same thing, however they may disagree on the other details.